Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. Jason, he's back again, except this time it's been a. Did we talk before the pandemic or we talk after?
I think we talked before. I was actually going to ask you the same thing. I'm pretty sure we talked before the pandemic because we would have brought it up. I felt like we had a good chat about a little bit of everything, but I think it just hit after we talked. To be honest with you.
Well, after I think your first episode, we just talked about pizza reviews because that's what you were kind of doing, and then you kind of train.
Yeah,
You're a painter now. You're a Vincent Van Gogh of the arts.
painting. I've got the taco review. So funny thing about the cowabunga pizza thing, man, it was kind of crazy. So there was a pizza shop that opened up in Canada called Cowabunga Pizzeria, and my phone was nonstop blowing up for people trying to order pizza from Canada. And I live in Arizona, so it's an Arizona phone number. I had to go on and figure out how to reverse engineer like how to get my contact information off that fucking website. I was sick of my phone just blowing up, people trying to order pizza. And then they started emailing me, hitting me up through WhatsApp, like every way possible, because I kind of built that website just for fun. Trying to learn, I work at GoDaddy, so I was trying to learn the system. So I kind of did all the SEO, and I must have done a good job because then everybody just started calling me like crazy. I even hit the guy up. It's the weird thing is I don't know how they do pizza in Canada, but they um they just sell like X amount per day. So it's like they have, I don't know if it's like 100 pizzas, but they have a limit. And once they hit that limit, then they're just done for the day. But they don't have a website. So I have no fucking clue how they run their pizza shops out there. But the
I think that
pizza
just
looks
that just might be the store location because there's a meat place out in California where they only serve a certain amount of people per day. Like they'll run out of roast beef or something.
yeah,
So then like you're
yeah,
waiting in line for like it's like when you see the people wait out in front of game stores or Supreme stores and
yep,
they only accept a certain amount of orders. Then eventually you get up to the line, like, can I get a roast beef sandwich? Like, sorry, we stopped selling roast beef about 100 people ago. And you're like,
yeah.
what?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how they do it because their pizza looks it looks really good, man. It looks authentic. It's funny because some of the people that called me, I let them know. I'm like, nah, we just do pizza reviews. Can you do me a favor and hit me back and let me know how the pizza was? So they actually did, believe it or not. I had like 4 or 5 people hit me back, but yeah, I hit the guy up through Instagram, and I was like, hey man, if you're interested in this domain name or website, like I'll just give it all to you because this was really just for fun for me. And yeah, I mean, he never really responded back. So, but yeah, Cowabunga Pizzeria. So kind of funny thing that I kind of slowed it down a little bit, but they started focusing a little bit more in food in general, just kind of opened it up a little bit. I bought the domain name Meals That Get You Laid and master cooking, so that way I could focus on more than just pizza. But and then I don't know, I think we might have touched on it too, but I have a website called tacosaremylife.com where I just do taco reviews. It's really just to get free tacos, but yeah. Yeah.
See, that would sound like a crazy idea, like maybe 2, 3 years ago. But then now it's like how many people are getting paid to do reviews of certain spots? But it's like, it's just like podcasts, and there's only like a certain few that everyone watches over and over again. It has to be a combination of like your personality and stuff
Yeah,
too.
it does. And it's funny too. I know like at first my Instagram was kind of blown up. Obviously they changed their algorithms a little bit, but I did have one of my friends from high school. She hit me up and she's like, hey, I don't mean to be a brat, but let me give you some advice. And she sent me like one of her friends kind of Instagrams where she took like, because I literally just am like, I'm sitting in my car. I don't like to do the review in the restaurant, just like filming myself. And like I don't want them to know if it sucks or not, I guess, like directly in their shop. So I tend to go eat it, so this way it's like unbiased opinion, because if they're sitting there in front of me, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, it's delicious, when in reality I'm like, no, this sucks, so I'm kind of a little bit more myself when I'm just by
You're a
myself.
nicer version of Dave Portnoy or whatever
Yeah,
his name.
yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I took it from, trying to do the tacos. I know there's a guy I follow on Instagram who's kind of killing it with the tacos, Taco God, and he's got like tens of thousands of followers. But Yeah, man, it's interesting because I've been out here in North Carolina doing, and I mean, I don't know. I have a couple friends that live out here, but they live a couple hours away, and I'm smack down in the middle of nowhere. So I drove to Winston-Salem, which was like a 45-minute drive, and hit up like four taco spots. And the tacos here are just so different than on the West Coast. They literally just serve them with like onion and cilantro. That's it. But yeah, it's you're right. But she sent me this girl's Instagram. She's like, yeah, she literally travels the world and just does food reviews. But it's interesting because on her Instagram she only had like 200 followers, but she did a pretty good job of as far as creating content. But like you said, I feel like the reviews I give, I might have a little bit more personality than she does because I didn't really even see a review. I just saw her kind of documenting it. So you kind of almost have to kind of, like you said, kind of create your own little like vibe or culture, I guess.
Well, it's weird because then there's like some background, I would say, when it comes to like a person subconsciously viewing a video. Like they can
Hmm.
tell through the authenticity if the person actually is like this in person. Like when you're talking to someone, you can kind of sense is like, you're not a real talkative person, are you? But it's like, I'm trying to be for this like their conversation skills are lacking compared to the fact of like how maybe they're projecting it to people. It's like when you see a review or something, there's reviews for people like my buddy does a cereal review. He just gets high and enjoys eating cereal. That's his whole thing. But then there's people that will like just do a review where it's like out of five, here it is. Here's what I think about it. And they're going in like the taste and the texture, but they're analyzing every single thing. Like they're
Yeah.
trying to be like an industry reviewing a product, like an actual food critic, where I'm like, now all these people that are doing these certain events, are they actually like, should they be meant to be that job? Or like, is that a deep down want or need of like when they review the pizza, they go, the crust. It's got a little bit too much of this in it, not enough of this. The texture of it is a little, and they're going into this fucking like Gordon Ramsay style like criticism, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's fucking DiGiorno from a frozen pizza. Like, what do you want from it? They're not going to give you the best of everything. That's a rare delicacy when you find like a grocery store pizza that's like, this is fucking banging.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Because when I mean, kind of the idea of doing the taco reviews was doing it with I have an identical twin, so we were kind of doing it together. And we don't live in the same state, so there's not been a ton of reviews that we've gotten to do together. But when we did link up, we had a friend come film it for us, and he was like, he was telling us, he's like, dude, you guys really turn it on when the camera's on. Like, he was actually kind of like, you guys don't really fake it. You're pretty authentic, but it was kind of strange because my brother and I we were just talking about it. My brother will go in and he's like, I think we should just ask what their most popular taco is, order that taco, and then review it. So that's pretty much what we've kind of stuck to. But after you do, I think I have like 66 reviews just on Instagram that I filmed, and after a while, you start realizing what tacos you like and don't like. So when you go in there, like, yeah, the steak taco, I was like, yeah, sometimes you just want to try something like completely off the wall, crazy. And yeah, so and then two, you are paying for the taco. I mean, sometimes we have gotten them for free, which that's the ultimate goal. But you got to pay for the taco. You got to give them some love, and then if you're gonna pay for it, you might as well pay for something that you like. So I went in the other day and I asked them. She's like, "Yeah, we got onion and cilantro." To me, that's just the most plain taco, like no like tomato or salsa or pico de gallo. So I asked her, I'm like, "Yeah, can you throw some guacamole on here?" She's like, "Sure." And then when I went outside to do the review, she just threw a couple slices of avocado on it. I'm like, no offense, it's not guacamole, but when in Rome. But yeah, no, I agree with you. It's like when I'm watching a review, I kind of want it. I don't want it to be like that whole in-depth thing. I kind of try to keep it short and sweet. I think people like that. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's one of those where I could see it being something like being the next Anthony Bourdain, but at the same time, you got to be really good or kind of have a huge following if you want to get to that level. Which
I never really understood when people were like, "Yeah, I do it, but I hate doing it." I'm like, "Then why are you continuing on doing it? Like, is it worth being miserable to do so?" And I had a guest I was reaching out to, and she was like, "Well, I wanted like an interview." And I'm like, "Well, I don't really do that type of interview." And she's like, "I listened to your last episode. It's good, but yikes." And I was like, "What did I say in the fucking interview or the conversation that led to yikes?" And that
yikes, yeah,
she never got back to me. So I was like, "Okay, I mean, you look." So I was forced to look through my back catalog, dude. a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, or like maybe a year and a half ago around the time you were on, it was nothing but like the list of people I was talking to were a lot of food reviewers. And I realized how
Mm,
big of a trend that was. And then now it's like completely forgotten. Not in the aspect of like there are some people that are still enjoying that, but it was the
right.
aspect of like really big back in the day. Now it's reaction videos. People want to see other people react to like baby videos, or people want to see get people get hit by a car, or Jackass is coming back. You're about to see a trend of people that are just getting hit by like random things doing stupid stunts. And I'm like, what's the or the ASMR was huge. Now it's like ASMR had a drop off. Like I don't see any ASMR videos anymore of like people brushing their teeth. I actually just watched one this morning, which tells you like what I don't do at 2 o'clock in the morning is sleep. I was watching
Right.
at 2 o'clock in the morning where a snowboarder had her headphones on and she's like listening to Rihanna and singing it to her GoPro, and then she's
Mhm.
strapping in her little straps on her snowboard, and all you hear is this like a bear, and she
Right.
starts going down this fucking hill, and this bear is just chasing after her, and she has no fucking clue. She's just slowly like sliding back and forth, like not freaking out, like just singing along, and this bear is just rushing at her, and she eventually like went too fast where the bear just stopped chasing after her. But I was like, she went home, got onto her GoPro, plugged it into the computer, and saw that video. I was like I almost just fucking died.
You know, I that's funny that you say yikes, because I mean or she said that because I honestly thought your podcast was great. I mean it was, I mean it was so easy to talk, and it was like an open kind of platform, which was cool because sometimes those interview questions, I call it like, you know, I don't know if you've ever been on like Tinder or Bumble, but those feel like, you know, when you're connecting with somebody, I just call it 21 questions, like the same fucking 21 questions. What's your favorite song? What's your favorite thing to do? Blah blah blah. It's like you might as well just have a queued up fucking letter, just like send it to him, be like, yep, there you go, there's my resume. Let me know if you're interested.
What I enjoy most of it is like just the evolution of thought. Like I'm not thinking how I was like 2.5 years ago before the podcast started. And I was like, that's kind of like the what people really enjoy is just like you're not talking to listeners, you're talking to me. So then it's like
Right.
somebody's a fly on the wall in the room. And I think if you want an interview, like even I watch those videos, they have to be like 10 or 15 minutes long, like an hour and a half of just some person talking about themselves the whole entire time and just only responding to a question. I'm like, man, I couldn't do that. I have to get out of that little like I won't even talk to some famous people because they want scripted questions. I'm like, it's just not how my show goes.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. I mean, and honestly, I'd prefer to just listen to open conversation. You know, it's to me like, you know, it is good to hear some of those interview questions, but yeah, you're right. It gets just too damn boring. And you know, I think the open conversation's nice. So if it's not for them, fuck them. You know?
I am not gonna lie though, there is one person I'm trying to reach out to specifically to talk about one certain topic, and that's a woman that's studying and doing a research study on the JFK assassinations
Okay.
or the JFK assassination. I was like, oh, well, most people think he just like obviously was killed by Oswald, and they're like, no, there's something deeper down there, like studying through all this, and that was just came from me because I was reading a book by Tom O'Neill where it's about the
Nice.
Charles Manson murders, and they
Okay.
were talking about how like in jail they were drugging him, and I'm like, bro, this shit goes deep. The government was
Right.
drugging him. I was like, I
Right.
gotta know some more.
Yeah. Well, I believe it. You know, it's crazy because I don't know if we talked about it, but before I worked at GoDaddy, I wanted to be a pharmacist. So right out of high school, you know, they're always like, hey, go to school, what you like to do. So I'm like, I like to make money, and I was interested in drugs. So I was like, I'm going to go into
Money,
pharmacy.
drugs, and bitches.
Yeah. It's like, let's go. So I got my pharmacy tech license, and then I started working there. And at the time, I was actually growing weed. And I got a job at Express Scripts Incorporated, which is, it's like, if you haven't heard of it, it's like basically it's an automated pharmacy. It's like Amazon, but for your prescription meds. But you have to have like a regular prescription, like birth control or, you know, something like that you're taking regularly, because they ship you 3 months at a time. So when I started there, I was like a paper boy, and it was kind of strange because you had to be good at the computer, but I was also like, I rode mountain bikes, and I was good at taking shit apart and putting it back together. So I was like handy with the tool. So there was like, they called them canisters. There's like 1,280 of these machines that dispense medications into these little chutes, and then they kind of, each chute had the you know, kind of quantity of pills for the patient. They would drop into the vial. So there was like a lot of technical stuff that went on filling these scripts. But I got to fly around for like setting up all these super pharmacies for them, and bro, like it was insane because I flew out to St. Louis, and they're unmarked buildings. They really don't want you to know where these pharmacies are because people would go try to fucking raid them. And they were kind of telling me when they first set it up, like, so they like the trucks got hijacked with machine guns, and then somebody like took a saw and fucking cut open the building. They didn't make the walls, like they didn't reinforce them enough, so then they
Hmm.
had to go reback and engineer it. So yeah, but the
I
amount of
found a stud, and he's like sawing into the wall.
yeah, they sawed through the wall to take a truck out of it. It was like, obviously there's some people in the inside that were helping them out with it, but they had anthrax room. They had like double, like they had some serious stuff that was laid out. And yeah, I mean, so just seeing that, because their number one client was the DoD, so it was the military, Army, Navy. So to have a contract that big, I wasn't working for the government, but you kind of were since they had a contract with them. I believe it, dude. There's so much sketch stuff going on in there. Like this was like when the politics, like every time the voting season came around, they would have like the governors or the mayors and stuff come through. They weren't telling you who to vote for, but they were pretty much telling you you
Yeah.
should vote for this person. And I just thought it was so sketch. I just had to get a new job
I
after
was
that.
wondering why I was seeing like a rise in trend of videos where like people were just robbing stores and then nobody was doing a damn thing about it. And they were like the people that worked there, I thought it was like, oh, they got you on camera. So if you rob something, they'll track you through the camera thing. Even if they're wearing a mask, like usually they see them like take it off outside or something like that. But it was because a lot of the people that work at pharmacies, like grocery stores, they don't give a shit because they're not getting paid enough money to try and stop somebody and risk their life. And I was like, damn, like that's true. Like every time I go to my pharmacy to get a medication, every time I call, can I get this medication refill? When do you want to pick it up? I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I get it. Your day kind of might suck because you're dealing with nothing but old people. Like, I need my medication. It's like, it's next week. No, it's today. It's like, no, it's next Monday. It's like, oh shit. But
Yeah.
they just, that personality, there's none of it there. And I'm like, I guess I get it. But like, everyone just seems pissed off every time I go. And I dread just going, God damn it, I got to go pick up this medication.
Uh, I think that's like almost at every job now. Sometimes, even myself, I kind of get in that routine, but it's like, dude, you're pissed off for doing your fucking job. Like, you ask them a question, they're just annoyed. That's the worst. That's kind of actually why I enjoyed working at Express Scripts. I worked there for about 10 years. I started when I was 18 and left when I was like 28. So I worked there for a good amount of time, but I got to listen to my headphones, so we weren't dealing with the public since it was automated. So I started listening to an audiobook, and I was like listening to an audiobook a day, which was cool. But now I deal with I take calls like tech support at GoDaddy, and oh my gosh, like yeah, sometimes yeah, I feel like I'm that person where I'm like, yeah, you don't remember your fucking password. Like you're trying to help troubleshoot them. So yeah, I get it. But yeah, it's so annoying when you're working with somebody who's not in a good mood. That's the worst.
Well, like most of like, all right, so this might be an opinion, but I feel like it's also a little bit of a fact is like 10, 15 years ago, job security was completely different than what it is today. And especially I
Mm,
think after the pandemic, it's only gotten worse with like the job security factor. Like my grandpa worked at the same hospital for almost 25 years. And then like towards like when he was coming up on like you're able to get retirement, they were slowly pushing him out. Like he was like, they're gonna like end up making me like quit or I'm gonna get fired before I even hit the mark for when I get my benefits. And I'm like, so what do you do after that? He's like, I'm out of that's 20 something years down the drain, man. I work at a hospital. I'm used to doing maintenance. Then they moved from to cleaning. And then eventually he was like scheduled like 2 days a week. And he's like, am I going to be able to make it to the, and they just push you out of the companies. And I'm like, you expect why people like pick up a hobby or like they
yeah,
work from it, start an online business or they start up something because you're not making them like enticed to want to work. You're making them, they're making more money staying home most of the time than they are going to their actual job.
yeah. I mean, even at GoDaddy, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love working for them. I've learned a lot, but the way they run their business, I feel like the people in charge have just been there for like 10 years too long, or they're just got their blinders on because I mean, I started in a position and they moved me from, it was like a sales and tech like support role. Now I just do tech support, but I still have a sales quota, but I don't get paid commission for it anymore. I did my taxes. I made like 9 grand less this year than I did the year before, and I've learned so much more over the last year for them. And it's just like it's just ass backwards, and it's like a rotating door there. And I kind of realized I'm like, it makes sense because they'd almost prefer to just get some newbie in there to pay them, 15 bucks an hour starting off instead of paying somebody like, 20 plus bucks an hour. They don't, it's such a big company. They just don't give a shit. And it's kind of sad, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, this whole, the pandemic though has changed the game up. Still doing the personal training thing?
Well, I work at a gym, yeah.
Okay. How was that during the pandemic? Did it shut down at all for a bit or?
It was down for a couple of months, but then it just opened back up once like you could go back to like gym facilities and stuff like that. But I mean, we had to wear masks and stuff like that. What I started to realize was, so like I'm a little bit sunburnt for people watching the video, but I was at the beach and there was thousands of people there, and I was like, everyone just, maybe it's my brain, and maybe it's a mix of a bunch of other factors too, which I'll list them off. But from working at a gym, you come across some people that are like, God damn, who the fuck are your parents? You got some great genetics. Then I go
Right,
to the beach, and when I was a kid, I used to be like, every chick's hot, every single one. Now it's like,
right.
Jesus Christ, where the fuck? And I don't know if it's COVID weight. I don't know if it was testosterone from now I'm older and there's not much testosterone it was when I was young. But then it's like, maybe it's the gym because it just funnels in people that have the amazing body to go to the
Yeah.
gym and keep working on it. So I'm like, maybe it's a multitude of factors, but I'm like, Jesus Christ, half of these people look like Goonies from the, or Sloth from the Goonies.
Yeah, well, I think you're right too. It kind of varies from state to state from what I've seen. Because in San Diego, when I'm visiting my brother, it's like, I mean, damn, you're like, damn, all these chicks are just beautiful. And then I come here to North Carolina, I'm like, damn, these are freaking heifers down here. Like the because of the climate, or they're not having to be in a bath, or they're not in a bathing suit year round. So I think it kind of changes. But yeah, I definitely know COVID's played a game. I personally kind of experienced that a little bit because um, when we were, when we were working from home, I didn't have a home office. I mean, I just was renting a room from my buddy, and then of course it's a pretty small room too. So I mean, I kind of it couldn't even fit all my clothes in the closet, so I had to have like X amount of clothes in my dirty laundry bin, and just kind of had to keep up with that cycle. That's how small the room was. And then of course now I'm working from home, so I work 10-hour days. Man, I was going stir crazy at first. I literally felt like I was at house arrest in my house. You know what I mean? Because I
Yeah.
was sleeping and then turning around and working. I wasn't even leaving the damn room just to go get, food from the refrigerator. And it took me a little while to get out of that stir crazy. And then, yeah, I kind of just realized, I'm like, you know what? Fuck, I'm just gonna make, the best of this. So I kind of souped up my home office. I have like a stand up desk where I can stand or sit, and then I put in some like dumbbells and like a little like Bosa ball, and then I'd be sitting there fucking like working out on the phone. so it kind of ended up working out for me. Now I don't even want to go back to the office, but yeah, I mean, I definitely got like lazy there for a little bit. Not even having to get up and really get changed to go into the office, just literally rolling out of bed and in your pajamas. So yeah, it's changed. I think COVID's played a huge part of it, but and I mean, shit, now that this Delta variant's going on,
Dude,
it just seems,
there's three others. I'm not even worried about it at this point. They have
yeah,
COVID, and they have Delta, and then they have Delta variant plus, and then they have Lambada, which is apparently is vaccine resistant. And I'm just like, I'm gonna sit. It's like watching fucking reality television where they like Kim Jong, what is it, North Korea, when they introduced the sister, and it's like, oh
yeah.
Jesus Christ, now it's really like a fucking what is a reality television? So they got the evil sister coming in.
It's almost comical, I'm all for like science and the vaccine, but I personally, like, I just feel like they rolled that shit out way too quickly. I mean, it's like, dude, you guys need more research to figure out if cannabis is, you know, like, should be legal or not. How much more fucking research do you need? But you rolled out this vaccine, that's just, in my opinion, they just rolled it out way too quickly. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I do remember, I mean, like I said, I used to listen to audiobooks and podcasts daily. There was a year I listened to over 200 audiobooks in a year, and I was, spending like $20 a day on it just to get through my, 8-hour work shift. Spending a ton of money on that until I realized you can go to the library and check them out for free. But there was a I can't remember what the vaccine was, but this happened in like our parents' lifetime, where they were giving out vaccines, and then years later they realized that it was related to, I don't know if it was autism or something, but there was, they realized it wasn't necessarily beneficial. So that's kind of what I'm kind of like, you know what? I'm
I just froze on me.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know about the whole the vaccine thing. I'm just kind of I'm just kind of interested to see where it goes. It's almost comical. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine. I mean, if I have to, you know, for to kind of, I guess if you're in like New York, you pretty much have to if you want to fucking live a normal life. But goddamn,
I was just happy when I went to the beach that I saw a bunch of people just enjoying life again, where it
mhm.
was like because before it was like mostly people didn't really give a shit. And then now at this point, it's like everyone actually cares about life a little bit. Like everyone's really appreciating what they have, like going out and it's like, but the fishing tournaments down here, they're going $9.4 million is the grand prize for catching like a giant marlin or something. There was a dude I watched a video of. His boat started sinking and he had to hop out of his boat, and then another person picked him up and they're like getting all of his equipment out of the water and everything. He's just sitting there like, man, I'm it's the first time out of the house all fucking year. I expected my boat to be not really working too well, and the
Yeah.
next it starts sinking. But he's not mad. He's like, fucking, let's drink beer. They're all like, yeah, dude, let's drink, man. And they're just
Yeah.
sitting on a boat drinking. I'm like, man, that's all you could really ask for, is like at least you got some community aspects coming
I
back.
know that's huge because I mean I was hosting board game nights where it was just we'd get together, play board games, and then we stopped that during the pandemic, and then we kind of kicked it back up. And I didn't realize like these were like some of the people I was hanging out with the most, and it was just like that human interaction was nice. I mean, I know talking on the phone and stuff is great, but it's different when you're actually hanging with people and you're face to face. It's definitely different, and it is nice to get back to the normalcy, which is so strange watching the Olympics. Nobody's in the stands. It's like, god damn, how much money do they spend on all that? Like there's
The
nobody even
best
watching.
is Tim Dillon when he put up he voiced, I don't know if you know who Tim Dillon is.
I'm not familiar with them.
He's like a really like he's an outrageous comedian, but he exposes like a lot of government shit. He's like an Alex Jones type.
Okay.
He has a crazy backstory. He used to do drugs and work in the stocks, and then all the stocks, everything when the Wall Street crash happened, he was working that. And like he was addicted to cocaine and all the shit. He always talks about it. Which is weird because like people look at him and they go, he's a piece, like he's a Republican, he's all this, he's like all this, like, but he's not. He actually hates them both, and he's gay. So like
Okay.
he actually on one of his podcasts he ranted about an Airbnb saying it was owned by a bunch of, and he just started going against like the lesbians that owned it, and everyone was
Right.
giving him shit for it, but he was like, I don't give a fuck. But he voiced over the intro to the Olympics when everyone's walking in the stadium, and he's like acting as a broadcaster. He goes, here we have the Olympics, and he just starts going. Actually, I might see if I can play that real quick on my phone.
Yeah, yeah. Have you seen the one with Snoop Dogg and Kevin Hart doing that?
Yeah, well, they actually did the MSNBC on their fucking like suits and shit, and were voicing
Yeah.
it over.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty hilarious. They're like surfing's in the Olympics. They're like they're surfing out there with a typhoon. I'll tell you who's not going into the ocean with the typhoon. Black people. It's like so funny. But yeah, going to the politics thing, you know, this with the last, political with like the voting. Oh my God, that was. I mean, they're always crazy, you know, but this one was just insane. I swear, when I'm talking to people, the Republican or Democrat, I don't even think they fucking know what the difference is half the time.
So this is so after he did this like little voiceover thing of like the NBC, he put NBC employee fired after a hot mic incident at Olympics. Washington Post, New York Post, all these major newspaper things took it and said like copied it and said, and this guy just got fired for his mic not being off. And then they figured out it was Tim Dillon faking it and just making a joke. They had to all print out a retraction. They said failed stand-up comedian. And he's like, because you guys are pissed, you guys had to print a fucking retraction. But this is the clip.
Welcome to the 2021 Tokyo Olympic Games, and take a look at these beautiful non-traditional opening ceremonies. Am I off? Jesus Christ, this is a fucking disaster. We just spoke to a chief medical examiner. They said 60% of people in the stadium will be dead within 10 days. They're thinking of using the swimming pool as a mass grave. Did you know that? Yeah, they're just gonna start burning bodies. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they'll do. They'll make sushi out of people. I don't even know why we're here. There are people already dying. They're covering it up. One of the shot put guys is on a ventilator. One of those big hulking swimming dykes is dead. It's fucked. The whole thing is fucked. Look at this bitch. God. What is this country? Enough already.
But they all retweeted that and put it like in giant articles talking about it and shit. And he's
So
like,
they said that somebody was fired and they didn't even know who it was.
well, that's what he put up on his thing, and then everyone's retweeting it. And then I guess World Star Hip Hop got a hold of it. All these like things like World Star Hip Hop back in the day used to be nothing but fight videos where they would put
Right.
up people just getting punched in the face. Now they're like an established like news source that they go to. Like TikTok is that too now. Like
Yeah,
if you click
yeah.
on TikTok, it used to just be a bunch of people doing funny videos with like voicing over music. Now it's like you get articles from there. You get articles. There's a person sitting there ranting about the fucking COVID and all that, and you're like,
Yeah.
what is happening? Like people, someone sent me a TikTok of the United Nations that just took over the largest naval base that we have in our country is in Norfolk, Virginia. They just completely took it over. It's now part of the UN. And I'm like, when you're trying to get all your troops in line, you're going to all the major giant impact forces. That means either something is coming or you're trying to make sure that there's no infiltrations or you're making sure everybody's ducks in a row. So
Right.
like it's fucking weird how you're getting this information off TikTok, but that video was tweeted by like all these major articles. It was played on like CNN and all this type of stuff. And they had to print
Yeah.
a fucking retraction. I was laughing my
Yeah.
ass off.
Oh, it's funny that one of the first books that got me into reading a ton was The World is Flat by Alfred Friedman, and he talks about kind of how like the world is becoming more of an even playing field, and it really with technology. Yeah, I mean, shit, I get notifications about kind of like news and like updates on stuff via Twitter faster than I do from some of the news sources like CNN and stuff, and it just blows my mind just because people are they kind of it spreads like wildflower, but it's kind of cool. It's definitely something that you got to sift through the bullshit because there's a ton of bullshit out there, which is kind of funny talking about the pandemic. Like one of my friends, she posted something the other day about, your Googling research and stuff can't be as good as the CDC, like who spends millions of dollars on it. But so that kind of goes to like sifting through the bullshit. Cause even when COVID first came out, kind of, they were talking about the cruise ships, how it was on the cruise ship and then they were cleaning it but they're still finding traces of it on the cruise ship 15 days later. And then it was like 6 feet apart. And then the CDC went through and said you can be 3 feet apart, I think mainly so they could just kick kids back into school. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm not really on TikTok a whole lot. Are you on there? Or you
I
get
don't
paying
use it at
attention?
all. I just get
Yeah.
people that are on it and send me videos and I see it off like Facebook or something. I
Yeah.
try and like limit a lot of my social media presence and stuff because like
Yeah.
only time is if I'm talking to like a guest of the podcast, which I mean, we haven't talked in a while, but you're more than happy to come on again. Like I'm having returning guests on because I prefer instead of just getting new people all the time, I also like
Mhm.
having a good conversation too.
Yeah.
Cause there are some where it's like, what are you trying to like base the show off of? And it's like that's kind of the point is it goes in all directions. And I think we're talking about the even level playing field is that the
Mhm.
fact of like a PhD does not mean as much as it did 10 years ago,
Oh, hell
doesn't mean
no.
as much as it did 5 years ago. I've had better conversations and more information pulled out of something that who wasn't in a master's degree or anything like that.
Right.
But if anything, it just keeps us all at the same level where you realize we're all trying to figure something out. So when you start seeing people on social media start talking down to someone, is when I'm like, that's the one thing that pisses me off. Don't talk to someone who you feel might be insignificant because I bet in another area they excel way past
School,
you.
yes, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, going back to, I wanted to be a pharmacist, so that's some serious schooling. Well, then I got my pharmacy tech license, so I started working as an assistant, but then I became a supervisor, and it was like, then I realized that really all the pharmacists were there for was legal reasons. They really didn't know shit, to be honest with you. So it was kind of like, I'm not saying that they weren't intelligent and didn't know how drug interactions work, but at some point it was kind of like they were asking me questions and I'm like, you do realize that I'm the assistant to you, like I'm a tech, you're the pharmacist, so it's your call, it's not me. And like just the fact that I had to remind them of that just kind of led me to believe that they're book smart, but they weren't necessarily like street smart. But yeah, I mean, you could pretty much fucking go to YouTube University. I always say that YouTube University, and find all the information you want in the world. It's crazy on any subject, and just it blows my mind because people, it's like don't realize how to use Google. Sometimes people call and I'm like, oh, I don't know, but I can Google it for you. It's like they could have fucking done that and saved themselves the fucking 30-minute phone call by just, typing in the question into Google. It just blows my mind.
Well, they just had two amateur, I guess there were people that work at a museum, but they were able to, like, they had a mummy, like one of the bodies, and they were able to 3D print the mummy's vocal cords, and then they recreated the sound it would make while they pushed air through it, and they were able to get a quick clip of a sound. And I was
Wow.
like, that's from people that aren't like, they don't have Harvard degrees. They just work at a museum, but you get like, there's a top trending lady, I forgot what her name is, but she's on TikTok and like Facebook and all this type of stuff. She recreates 3D printing of Iron Man uniforms. She's known as like the female Iron Man. She has the blue
Mhm.
suit and the red one, and then she has like all these different color suits, but they're just 3D foam prints. But they like she makes the technology move using wires. She calls it in the beginning of the video. She goes, "I'm a failed biomechanical engineer," and it's like failed, but you're making billions of hits on fucking TikTok and all these things,
Yeah.
which is like, I mean, a fart, if it's done properly, can probably get a billion
Yeah,
hits, but
yeah, yeah. No, I know it is nuts how quickly things can go viral, and I think it's great. I definitely, like you said, I kind of limit myself too, because I kind of go into spurts where I'll be like really active, and then I'll go with like a couple months where I hardly even get on. And then I'll get more active into it. Lately, I've been in kind of like that. I don't know. It's like kind of ups and lows a little bit, but yeah, you could spend all day on there if you can, and it's like spending all day like watching stupid videos. They're not all stupid, they're funny, but yeah, it's one of those where I can't. I mean, I'm kind of curious how it's going to be with most of these kids going to school from the computer, especially over the last year. I have some friends who have like kindergartners, and they're starting kindergarten behind a computer, which is great. Some of these kids are born with the computer in their hands, so they know how to use them. But then, like that face-to-face interaction goes away, and I'm wondering how they're going to perform in the real world. I'm kind of curious what that generation is going to be like when we get a little bit older.
well, I was watching, I think they're gonna be really fucking smart compared to how like for instance, like my nephew, he was just here the other day and we're watching, he's 3 years old. I was like, "How old are you?" He's like counting on his fingers. He goes, "Three." And he said it like it was a question. And I was like, "Are you sure?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "Three, yes, three." And then we're watching a show and it's like there's a truck on there, a garbage truck, and there's a crane and they're like trying to figure out we got to move this boat, but the boat doesn't have wheels. It has cinder blocks hooked to them. So they're squares and the dude's
Hmm.
trying to pull the boat and it's not going because it has square wheels, but he's forcing it to go and it starts rubbing down the brick into a circle like a tire and starts going. And I'm like, a fucking show, a kids show, like an educational, like little small, like back in the day, it was like somebody would explode and it would teach you not to play with dynamite or run into quicksand. This
Right.
is teaching kids about like physics and
Physics.
all this
Yep.
crazy shit. And I'm like, what is the
Yep.
future going to hold?
I definitely think that there's going to be, I definitely think that we're kind of learning how to accelerate the learning curve for them, no doubt. Because I remember when I was in high school, it's my senior year, I was a grade above. So I was taking a college level course, but it was an experimental class from taking, the math behind a computer. They call it the computer lab. So we'd go in there, but it was kind of nice because everybody had different problems. You couldn't copy off the kid next to you because they were working on a different problem, but then the computer was like highlighting where you were fucking up on the math problem, and then it was helping tutor you more like keen to what you were doing right and doing wrong, which I thought was great. So I do see that being a benefit. But damn, I feel like I have a sister who's 3 years younger, and you give her friends a fucking a bicycle, tell them how to change a bike tire, and they don't know how to do it, but they definitely know how to program a phone. So it's kind of interesting because I do I I'm not saying all kids are like that. I definitely think a big part of it is the parenting, and I'm not a parent, so it's one of those, it's easy to say when you're not a parent. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I think that I'm just kind of curious to see how it goes. I guess I was more afraid of the interaction, social interaction, because I feel like that's extremely important. And if they're just doing it from behind the computer, because like you were saying, people behind the computer, I kind of feel like it's easy for them to talk shit behind a keyboard. You know what I mean? But you don't that's definitely not a way to treat people. It's definitely disrespectful. because like you were saying, they might not be, and that's kind of what I realized at my job, working at GoDaddy, is there's super intelligent people calling in who are running super successful businesses. Like I was just talking to a doctor the other day, but he was calling in to figure out how his website was working. And some of the questions he was asking, like they didn't even make sense because he just didn't even know how to structure the question because it wasn't his cup of tea. It wasn't like what he was good at. And finally I told him, he's like, yeah, I'm not a web guy. My web guy is making me do this. I'm like, well, why is your web guy even making you do this? Isn't that his job? So it was kind of funny because like he was a doctor, but I felt like I was talking to a complete dumbass, but obviously he's not a dumbass, but it was it just wasn't his wheelhouse. So
Well, it's like there's
yeah.
always two types of trains of thought, was that you had like educational thinking and then you had common sense. A lot of people
Mhm.
that had common sense didn't have a good educational background, didn't know like facts or statistics or history questions. But I feel like the internet has totally revolutionized that a lot. I mean, it's strange, man, because I look at like I'm the type that looks at the other perspective of things. Like the reason why I'm not a big fan of like you have to use your real name when you come on my show is so you don't say anything outrageous. But people go so that you just don't want like people using a fake name. Like I don't really follow a lot of people that don't use their real name on social media. I like to follow
Mhm.
people that I know who they are because then what they say is going to be attached to their face and their name. So then you know they're going to mean what they say. They're not just going to say like they could say Trump shit, they could say Biden shit, they could say whatever the hell they want in the most outrageous way that aliens are controlling the earth. As long as you're going by and you actually believe that, then I would never discern you for it. But when someone uses a fake thing and they want to use like an unknown source, they want to be anonymous, then they say outrageous shit. I'm like, I don't trust anything you say that you actually believe. You're just saying things to get a reaction, which is what people like. They want truth or they want a reaction or something outrageously crazy so they can have an enemy or straw man to hate.
Mhm.
But censorship, my mind has changed on it. I don't think like if people are going to go on as like a fake profile or something, there's a necessity for that too. I had someone come on here and tell me that it's all in the aspect of a lot of these people that go by a fake name or go by something like this. A lot of them are just people that work at companies that are trying to root out the evil of these companies like Amazon. There was that article about Amazon doing the worst possible shit where like you had 2 days to get a package somewhere. They made you piss in a cup and shit in a bag. Women, men, anything. Because when they have lunch breaks, let's say the commute to outside where you can go smoke a cigarette or something is 10 minutes. So then you have 10 minutes to go out there, 5 minutes to actually smoke, 10 minutes to get back. You have a 30-minute break. So then
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of time to do anything. Like they have to piss in bottles and shit. And they exposed that online. Amazon commented, said, this is remarkably untrue. And then they had people comment saying, I work at Amazon for 5, 10 years. It's untrue. Then someone caught it. They were using a fake profile. There's a guy on the internet called Dude
Yeah.
Perfect who's on a
Oh yeah.
popular TV show. And they saw his face and they're like, that's fucking Dude Perfect. And they called it out. I'm like, this is why I think with the amount that technology has expanded to the point that we're at now, and it's only going to keep going and going and going to where this is going to be seen as like, how much of Facebook did you watch today? Well, I watched like 10 Facebook videos. I watched a couple documentaries. I watched a couple of this. That's like getting an education now. So then
Mhm.
with that increase, I think with censorship, for instance, people talk about, well, you can't be mad at these companies for taking certain things off of their platform. It's like you're playing in their backyard. Yes, okay, that means we need to make new rules and community guidelines that says they cannot ban certain information, they cannot block they cannot restrict the flow, because then you're just practically brainwashing people. Orson Welles talked about this with like War of the
Yeah.
Worlds when he came on and made that fake announcement and scared a shit ton of people. You got to realize this with the censorship shit, you gotta, even if you just gotta hope that people have common sense to figure it the fuck out that it's not true. Like aliens aren't attacking the earth. That's not happening right now. But then there are some people that they might be on the edge of schizophrenia where they're like, oh, I fucking knew it. And then they go back into their basement for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of it. Yeah, it goes back to kind of you got to sift through the bullshit, and that kind of goes out to you got to have quite a bit of life experience. You got to have different experiences, and yeah, I mean that's kind of why doing everything behind the computer is, I think I personally kind of think schools should kind of go more towards. I don't know if you had it at your school, but I think it was called like DECA or something. But I had some friends that went to school in high school. They had like take these classes where they learned how to cut hair or they were learning how to be a mechanic, and then right out of high school they got these pretty legit jobs where they were making some pretty
My
good
buddy
money.
has one. He does
Yeah,
HVAC. We both took the same class together, except he's
nice.
making $20 an hour.
Yeah, and it's one of those where that I think I think if schools kind of structured it where they would say, hey, let's do this, let's go ahead and let's try to create, like, I guess at ASU they kind of created the, one of the first like robots that went to Mars, but it was like, let's just say they were having that as like their goal. And then it was like they'd take a mechanic class where they'd be building the robots, and then they take a financial class where they'd be, working on the budget, and then they took the physics class. So it was like all these classes, even though they all are all important, but they're all kind of working towards a goal. Because like, especially with like physics and math, like I wasn't necessarily bad at math, I just didn't like it, because I'm like, what the fuck is, what is pi? Like, my grandfather, he's a chemical engineer, and this was, he told me this after I was, this was when I was in college. He's like, do you know what pi is? And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, what is it? I'm like, it's 3.14. He's like, yeah, but what is 3.14? I'm like, I don't know, it's a non-stopping number. I couldn't tell him. He's like, 3.14 is the radius of the circle, and it goes around the circle 3.14 times. And I was like, fucking mind blown. And I'm like, how the hell have I not known that? And it was because I think, it's kind of goes back to the teaching, that school of teaching is just, it's just old school. We're not really meant to sit behind a fucking desk for 4 hours a day, or 6 hours a day. In fact, I was kind of reading that, where, when you're, if you kind of have one of those desks where you're standing on a treadmill, and you're, it is goofy to do if you haven't done it. Because I have a standing desk and I'm working out and stuff, and like a little bicycle. It's hard to kind of do at first, but once you get in the rhythm of moving in your movement, you kind of retain that information a lot quicker. And I think kind of like, it's interesting, because all my friends that are teachers, and when I ask them about, how are things going with the COVID, it was like they all had their own opinion, and then at some point they were just fucking sick of talking about it. But it's just, I think at this point in time, like there needs to be a change up for that, for sure. But yeah, I think COVID's just changing everything in a sense, where I'm kind of thinking about that too. There's a lot of unfortunate, there's a lot of families that, I had, 3 siblings, and I kind of grew up with a single parent family. So it was like, my parents were divorced. So granted, they weren't necessarily pooling their money together. And then if you have a mom who's got 3 kids, and now all of a sudden they all have to have a computer to go to school, like, dude, computers aren't cheap, and you got to buy fucking 3 of them, and then you have to have the internet. It's just kind of, I'm kind of curious how schools are going to be moving towards in the future.
I'm hoping if they're going to end up doing online learning that they need to have a class lesson on life. And I'm not talking about paying your bills. I'm not talking about any of that common shit that usually gets said about like teaching how to be an adult. It's about
Mhm.
teaching life lessons. I watched a video of a person that just took a video of with their GoPro in the ocean of just a barrel wave, like this huge wave just do this epic barrel, and as the wave was crashing, it was like the particles or the air or whatever, the water that was getting up hit into mist, looked
Mhm.
like it was going into the cloud. And I was like, just have lessons on life to show people that the world's not about fear, the world's not about being scared, the world's about living your life and doing whatever you feel like you should be doing in it to find a place or purpose to just be able to wake up in the morning and fucking smile. A lot
Yeah.
of people don't have that. Everything right now is all about fear mongering. Everything's all about like we have to live in fear, we have to be scared, we have to do all this. This does not mean the government. This just means that everything in the world is saying something that's going to kill you. Watch, like, people are awesome. Those videos that come out every year, let's see a
Yeah.
rising trend in those again, where people go like, this is fucking amazing how all these people were able to lift up this fucking car and get it off this person. There's you ever see the Amish move homes? There's just a bunch of them on one side and they all grab it and lift it the fuck up and carry it.
I
I'm like, that's restores your faith and love in like the world
it,
we live in.
it does, it definitely does. It's funny that you say that. I actually went to an Amish place the other day and got a sandwich, and it was fucking crazy busy. But they did have cash registers, and they were able to accept ATM and debit cards and stuff. But they're still doing some stuff like old school. But I think you're right, kind of going back to that. And one thing that I kind of think about, and this is maybe just because it's my experience, but like actually I did a report on it, but like urban gardens, I think it's really important for people to realize like how to grow your own, and at least just learn those basics. Because when somebody's like going to the garden, they plant it, they see it grow, and then they kind of harvest it, and then they use that produce to make food. That really kind of goes back to like super fundamentals, like literally the most basic of fundamentals that humans need to survive is to eat. and hunt, and most people live in the suburbs where they don't need to worry about growing their own food or hunting. They just go to the store and get it. And then we kind of saw that kind of during the pandemic where the fucking shortage of toilet paper, and like people were going to the foods and they're fucking raiding it. And then there was like a shortage of stuff where stuff was becoming super expensive, where it was kind of ridiculous to even get. And then that kind of goes back to like we could be solving a lot of these problems and benefiting, the going green by like kind of benefiting the environment by reducing, just the transportation of food, by just growing it local right there. Like in Florida, I think they have a nonprofit organization where they'll you can turn your front and backyard into a garden, and then they'll, you have to pay $500, and like the whole nonprofit organization shows up on bikes and shovels and shit, and they just transform your front and backyard into a garden. And all they do is ask you to give your produce to the farmers market after what you and your family don't consume. And that's a great idea. And I guess that nonprofit's like 2 years, behind. They have a 2-year waiting list just for people to have that happen. And I think I think that would be a really good trend to start, because you kind of, in order for us to kind of battle this, the going green and eliminating like all the carbon monoxide and whatnot of like, global warming, it's got to start on the household level. And then once you kind of make it easy and fun, then it will kind of start to expand and then really kind of make a big difference quicker than, mandating these big ass companies to do it. I think obviously you got to do it from both aspects, but I think that'd be I'd like to see that happen. And I think you can learn a lot from starting with those basics.
Well, the issue is remembering the feeling that you're getting when it's at right now. I've had a few things that have kind of changed my mind a lot. And it's easy to talk about the pandemic now that we've kind of gotten past like when it was in the beginning. And even though
Mhm.
people talk about it happening again, I'm like, yeah, but we're coming at it with hindsight now. Like when you read the 9/11 commission report, the 584 pages, the very first like 2 pages talk about like, now this is all hindsight and foresight. So this is us looking back at everything that was wrong, not what happened at the moment. You don't understand what happens when you panic. I mean, now with like the whole grocery stores, everything shutting down, instead of people buying maybe the food, maybe they should have just packaged up and got onto the factor of like getting your own garden, go to the supplies and the lawn care section to grab all the seeds and all that type of stuff. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even remembering, I did a podcast right after my buddy quit. Like his name's Jason. It was like Revolution or Revelation or Awakening, and he had quit his job. He'd been fucking miserable, and he's like, "Let's do a podcast." I was like, "Are you sure?" Because you're gonna be kind of like hyped up with like a lot of emotion and mixed energy and type of stuff. He was just talking into the thing like, remember this fucking feeling, so he can always look back on it whenever he feels like he's got nothing. There's always a brighter side or like a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's like
Mhm.
100%. You forget, man, when you get like, I wondered how many times in my head would I do if I saw someone get hit by a car, if I saw someone get into like have a heart attack, would I be the person that would step up and give that person CPR? Then it fucking happened at my work. A dude fell off the Stairmaster and died. And I
Wow.
realized in that moment, I fucking panicked. I called 911, but everybody else, like paramedics were working there. Luckily, we give like a medical discount. So if you're like a doctor or something, you get like a discount at our gym. So there was a bunch of them in there at the time, and they gave him CPR, brought him back to life. But I called 911, and the woman's like, what side of Food Lion are you at? I'm like, the left side. She's like, well, depending on how we're coming at the building, it could be either or. I'm like,
Right.
fucking near the dentist place. And then just
Right.
like they showed up, but you don't realize at that moment, you think so much in your head what you're going to do in that instance. And then it happens and you're like, fuck, you don't react at all like how you thought you were going to.
That's very true. I think you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head with like kind of hindsight. Now we kind of have that experience, and now we're going at it a different way. And it's funny because I have to try to remind myself of that too. Because when I was younger, I crushed 4 vertebrae in my spinal cord, so I was paralyzed from the waist down. So I couldn't even feel my dick. I couldn't go to the
I
bathroom. I
remember
was
you talking about that
yeah.
your first episode.
And then this morning I hopped on the bike and I rode it like 4 miles, but it was like there's a huge hill here, and as I was going down it, I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna have to come back up this hill. I'm like sitting there trucking up the hill like 2 miles uphill, and my legs were just burning, but I was kind of like, you know what, I'm thankful that I have the ability to even fucking cruise up this hill. So just even the smallest shit, you're absolutely right. But yeah, I'm definitely optimistic. I think it's a blessing. I think that there's like as the economy changes and COVID hit, there's like these short-term, pains that everybody's going to experience, and in every industry. And even like, obviously there's some industries like Zoom probably blew the fuck up during the pandemic because
So
everybody and
much
their
so
mom.
that they had to add a bunch of shit like a
Yeah.
disclaimer in their recordings.
Yeah, like there's some companies that just blew up during it. And like, it was like overnight, every Circle K and restaurant had those, like, plexiglass things in front of them. So like some companies did well, but even GoDaddy, they're a tech company, and it took them like months to get the equipment out for, their employees to work from behind a computer from home. Like, it's like, it was just kind of crazy to me that it took them that goddamn long, because at first I kind of told them, like, I don't want to use my personal computer for work stuff. Like, I know I'm gonna have to download stuff on there, and it's gonna be like Big Brother. It's not like I'm doing anything that I need to hide, but I don't, want you guys controlling my or reading my keystrokes, when I'm offline.
Well,
That's
Google
really.
Google just asked me about like, do you want to share your location? It's requesting, and I'm like, why the fuck would I want Google to know what my location is?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh dude, it's crazy. I mean, I know. Do you have an iPhone or do you have an Android?
This was just on my computer.
Okay. Yeah. They ask if you want to be tracked. The iPhone kind of is rolling out all this security, and I think they're all at, like, in battles. But yeah, it's nuts. And kind of like you were saying with the what we were talking about earlier, these little kind of like alias accounts. Because I do run a lot of social media accounts, so I have a ton of them on there. But I think what people start realizing is that, they know if it's an alias in account too. Like, I think I was just seeing it the other day, like Kevin Durant, the basketball player, he like slipped up, and he was, responding back from, he wanted to respond back from an alias account, but his main account. So it's kind of like, you're right, they kind of know what device that's coming from. And then if people, know how to figure it out, you can find out what IP address it's coming from. You can know exactly where they're at, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I think that's also a benefit, and it is a little scary too, because people make mistakes, but some of these kids are going to be grown up, and they're going to do something stupid, when they're fucking in their teens, and then they're going to try to run for president, and we're going to fucking know all about it. You know
Well,
what I mean?
there's a guy, I forgot what his YouTube channel's called, but he gets these spam calls, like, where it's like, what is your social security number? And you're like, what? My social security is at risk? What are you talking about? They're like, you have to give me your information now. Where he tricked these guys that called him, and he was like, they were asking about like donating, like giving him money and stuff like this. He was like, okay, and goes, they were supposed to transfer over some. He's like somehow lured them into this video or something like that, but they somehow transferred over money, but they transferred over too much. And he was pulling up like all their bank accounts. See, they just transferred money out of my account. Now they transferred it back even more, saying they're going to double my profits. And now they'll even double it even more if I transfer even more money. So it's like, you give them 50, they double it and give you 100 back. And then you choose to give them 100 so they can double it to 200, and then they take it. Like old RuneScape type shit where dude will tell you
Right.
double your fucking gold or something. And
Right.
it's all a scam. And then he was videotaping it, and he goes, I fucking know you guys. And they're like, what? And he goes, you work in that fucking Verizon in the back area of the mall, don't you? And they go, what? He goes, you have a blue fucking count? I have a photo of you guys, because this is not the first time he's dealt with these people. He pulls up
Hmm.
their photo. He goes, oh, and they go, you're that fucking YouTube guy. And he's like, yeah, I got you guys. But you don't realize, like, there's a whole investigation thing in Russia.
Hmm.
It's called a Russian troll farm. They literally hire people in Russia to create fake accounts online, go over into our database, and just spark up animosity. It's keeping a country divided by making people hate other people. Some
Oh
person
yeah.
saying a bunch of racist, horrible shit, and then you think it's every American is racist and horrible. So then you hate your own country when really it's another country doing that as a tactic to make you divided. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's a whole fucking thing, dude. It's insane.
Oh yeah, that's nuts. I mean, that's exactly like when you do go travel, it's like, you have all these kind of stereotypes that you're given, and then when you actually end up going to their country, you're like, dude, it's nothing like that. They don't hate you. We don't hate them. And yeah, you're right. It's definitely, this day and age, it's strange. It's strange that I mean, I know that everybody's got their own personal motives to do shit like that, but to me, I think just being honest and direct, and that seems like to be the best way to go about it, in my opinion. But
Well, see, you're luring in the idea of fame. Like when we
mhm,
talk about, for instance, someone like if I was ever going to be rich or if I was ever going to have money, I would make it just so I didn't have to struggle, but I would also promote my friends. Like you bet your
yeah,
ass after seeing some of your fucking paintings that you've made, I'd invest into you. For 100%, I'd make you like your own little company where at least you can make a little bit of paint and stuff like that and be able to do your
right,
paintings and stuff because they're fucking dope. They're very, very abstract. They're very, very different. There's something that I think I'm going to definitely link it in the show description so people can see some of your profile on, your paintings and stuff. But
yeah,
it's an aspect of people want to get famous. Now, if someone offered you, you're going to get famous, but I need you to say the most horrible, offensive, like reality television show. I've talked about this before. So there, have you ever watched the interviews of like Florida Bama or Jersey Shore?
yeah,
They'll say, we need you to say this word. And you're like, that's the N word. Like, I'm not saying that word. They're like, no, you don't need to say it. But what's going to happen is you start with the N and then end with the last letter. And then we're going to put a bleep in it. So it just sounds like you said it, but you didn't say it because, but everyone's going to hear it like I said it. They go, yeah, it's going to get more views to the show because then people are going to hate you and they're going to build you up as this enemy. And he goes, but I'm not like that. Like the situation comes off like an asshole, not an asshole, really
right.
nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and you're right. That's absolutely true. And it's funny that you say that too, because yeah, I like looking at the Jeff Bezos thing, like that guy, richest guy in the world, like, he's fucking going up to space and stuff. Like I mean, I think like kind of when I ask my friends, I'm like, would you rather be like a famous actor or actress, or would you rather be a famous musician? Because I think like a lot of musicians that are probably rich aren't necessarily famous, where you might not necessarily get recognized in the streets. I would hate that. I would hate going out into the public and people like not really being able to live an
You want to be rich or you want to be famous at golf because nobody
yeah.
knows who the fuck you are.
Yeah. Speaking of golf, I just kind of started playing a little bit just because that's like the only thing to do out here. It's like $20 to play, but yeah, it just reminds me of Happy Gilmore.
I definitely like, we have a couple golf courses in my town and stuff like that, but I see a bunch of friends go out there with the whole full gear and everything like that. I'm like, it's basically just a day to drink. Like you're
Oh
just
yeah,
drinking on the golf cart and you're driving around having fun hitting. I'm like, it's the experience. Like I'm not
yeah,
a type that would, because what's weird about golf, it's like being a pro bowler. You have to win. You can't just place like in the top three. You have to win to really get paid, and they only
yeah,
get paid like 100,000 or something like that. And that sounds like only 100,000, dude. If you get signed up just to be in the NFL, you get like $6.3 million. So it's
yeah,
like the grand scale of everything. Like it's interesting because NBA like is very very popular up in China. They just love NBA, but
mhm,
women's NBA in general, the top player only makes like 90,000 or something like that.
yeah,
Like there's a girl that goes to my gym and she goes, I used to play professional women's basketball. And I was like, where? She goes, yeah, we used to travel all around the world and stuff like that. I'm like, what are you doing in Ocean City? Like,
right,
this is a shithole. And she's like, well, you don't get paid that much because nobody wants to watch women play basketball. And I was
yeah.
like, that's fucking horrible. She goes, yeah, a star athlete on the team maybe makes 100,000, but compared to the NBA, when just the average bench warmer on that team makes like 4 point something million.
Yeah, yeah, it's the amount of money they bring in. Yeah, I mean, I was watching. I haven't really been interested in the NBA for the last few years, but the Phoenix Suns were, in the NBA Finals, which was crazy. It was crazy to
Suns
see.
and four, bitch.
Yeah,
Fucking
yeah, right. Speaking of,
twisted tea trend of the year.
it's so funny, and then Suns lost like four straight. Like that was a bummer, but it was interesting to see like the whole city go crazy. And they had like a little clips of like the WNBA. It's like the best WNBA player. I would have no fucking clue who she is. But yeah, yeah, there's probably like 15 to 20 NBA superstars on multiple different teams I'd be able to name off. So yeah, it's kind of nuts. I mean, I kind of learned that too. So in high school, since I did break my back, I was on the swim team, and nobody likes to, I mean, unless it's the Olympics and you're Michael Phelps, swimming is fucking boring to watch. It's not fun to swim either. You're kind of like, it's to me it's just kind of boring. But football was, I had a twin brother that played football, and it was like that's where everybody went to go watch the football games. Nobody went to go watch the swim teams. But football is what brings in the money. That brings in money for the school. So yeah, it is kind of sad that they're on that level. But Yeah, that's nuts. Yeah. I mean, if I could be a pro athlete, yeah, I'd probably pick golf. You know, because you could drink and smoke on the field.
If you really want to be like a famous person, you have to look at like be famous 10 years after you create what you're going to create. Because, like, an interesting thing is like, so my buddy went to a Green Day concert and he's my age. And I'm like, yo, and he's like, dude, they're popular as shit. I was like, because they hit the younger kids, and
Hmm.
then the younger kids got older. And it's like, necessarily my parents don't really care about Green Day, but then every kid that's like, my generation or younger knows about Green Day. It's like you want to make content for the younger audience, like a Mr. Rogers type, where everyone now I talk to is like, don't talk shit on Mr. Rogers. I was like, dude, it's because when you were a kid watching him, he was your fucking hero. Bill Nye did the same shit. He was
Yep.
your hero. He taught to the kids. Nobody gave a fuck about Bill Nye if they're friends with. I know people that like there's a lot of people that are in the NFL. I know people that went to high school with those people. Like, yeah, I went to high school with them. I'm like, that guy's a famous superstar. He goes, yeah, but he was just a regular person when I knew him. Like, he's
Yeah.
cool to younger kids, not to
Yeah.
the older ones.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't really. I think there'd probably be like a few, superstars that if I saw them in public, I'd probably go up and say, "Hey, can I get a picture?" And if if I saw majority of the people out in public, I wouldn't give a fuck. I guess that to me is just I'm not starstruck, but yeah, I mean, if I saw Michael Jordan, I'd want to get a picture because yeah, you look
He's in my
up.
town right now. Yeah,
Nice.
he's he always comes to the White Marlin Open. Everyone says he's an asshole, so I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can believe it when when you have like all that, all the freaking cameras on you. You can't, take a shit with in public. It's kind of like how Eminem raps about it. You know what I mean? Like he's like, just leave me alone. He's like, yeah, but you can't live a normal life like that. I personally, yeah, I don't know if I'd ever want to get to that level.
Well, with everything you do, you're signing a contract basically where you're going to know this is going to be the outcome. When you get in your car, you signed a metaphorical contract that you understand every single repercussion that might happen to you when you just take that travel onto the fucking highway on 90 and you're going 55 miles an hour. A person might fall asleep and fucking hit you. It's an unspoken agreement. That's everything with life. There's always that effect. That's why you got to wonder, what's the effect of me doing this? Is me doing this going to affect somebody else's life, or it's going to affect my own? Drinking out of plastic, for instance, has caused every generation since our great 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 grandparents to eventually lose fertility count. That's why there's a lot of miscarriages that are happening. The 97% of fertility count in our great 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 grandparents, now it's at 45% from the overall usage of plastics in our everyday products, from our shampoos to our waters to all these types of things. We don't notice at the time. It's not about the immediate effect, which everyone looks at. It's about the eventual long payoff. If I offered that you weren't going to be rich now, but you were going to be rich in your 40s or your 50s, you'd be like, well, I want it fucking now. It's like, well, you're still going to be rich and never have to worry. It's like, think about your kids. Think about your kids' kids. Like, we might look at a Jeff Bezos as like, he's rich, richest man on the planet. But the royal family, they're wealthy. They don't have to worry about their kids ever worrying, their kids ever worrying, their kids ever worrying. Jeff Bezos, just maybe his kids and his grandkids never have to worry, but then they have to keep up with that, because that's why Bill Gates is like, I don't want to give you my money. You got to make your own, and I'll give you some, but I don't want you relying on me, because then you got to worry about your grandkids. And the next thing you know, a couple generations down the line, his great great grandkids are fucking broke as shit. And he's like, my great grandfather used to be Bill Gates. Nobody gives a fuck.
Right, right. Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's one of those where you kind of have to figure out your own path there, and it's important, to contribute back. But yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, like you're kind of saying, I mean, money, it does create a level of like, when people say it doesn't create happiness, you can't buy wealth, like,
It
when
buys off a lot of sadness.
yeah, yeah. Like if you were like what's I'm blanking on his name, but the Steve Jobs, he was freaking balling, but when he got sick, it doesn't buy you can't buy your health, So yeah, but I agree with you. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think too with the way it's interesting, like the way with Biden kind of giving out the $250. I don't know if it's like $250 tax credit per kid, that you have now that these parents are getting monthly. Like, dude, that's some real dough. Like, I mean, why? I was kind of telling my friends, I'm like, I don't have kids right now. I mean, I'd love to have them one day with the right woman, but why shouldn't I be getting $250 extra too? Because I could turn around and contribute that to a school, or create my own. Maybe now I have $250 extra a month. Now maybe I can go ahead and coach a football team or a baseball team, and that's just as much of contributing to society as a parent. So it's kind of crazy to me. I don't understand the reason why we're just giving just parents $250. If you're giving out money, you should be giving out money to everybody, because sometimes there's people out there that don't have kids that are just as that are giving out more. They're giving their time and their effort. That's going to be, sometimes I had an ex-girlfriend say this. She didn't want to have kids, and she's like, if you didn't have kids, you could probably affect more people in the world than if you did. And I thought that was interesting that she said that, because I kind of started thinking about it. Is if I had kids, then I would immediately have to stop doing all of the, not immediately, but I'd probably have to stop doing a lot of the extracurricular activities that I do, because now I need to focus on taking care of my kids.
I have a couple exes that have kids, and it's like they're in their 20s and they have kids, like early 20s, and it's like they don't have any social life at all. And it's like so weird to see that shift. But it's like eventually you're going to be 30 and your kid's going to be like 15. It's going to be nice. So you don't have to fucking worry about all the bullshit in your 30s. But I had a therapist, my old buddy, he came on. I think he was on a little bit before you were, but he was talking about, he goes, like, there's no therapist that just wants to be out of the job. Like that's unique. You need mental health for the clients. And it's like, you start looking at like the homeless population. There's a big issue with homeless people. Do you know how much those people get paid just to work with homeless? You know how much they get paid a year?
I can imagine, probably like 50 G's.
$200,000.
Yeah.
$200,000 to help out the homeless population. And what they do is they go, well, we cleaned your tent for you. We cleaned your fucking heroin spoon. It's like, you give them, they're not helping them out of their situation because they're making more profit off of their being homeless people. The homeless fund in the world, people go, more money needs to go to the homeless. Dude, like billions of dollars are put into the homeless thing. It's just the issue is nobody who's running that, when the money gets let in, your opinion, you might start off like this clean, fresh faced person. Like, I'm so ready to do all these amazing things. Then you realize, oh my God, like the money is so good. I want to keep this issue going. It's like a drug dealer never wants to make sure that everyone gets clean off drugs or he's out of the business. There's it's so weird how these systems work and how that corruption goes into your mind. You might start with good intentions, but those good intentions get riddled with hate when you start realizing how much money you make off profiting off this person's sadness or this person's pain.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you say that too, because with nonprofits, I'll take phone calls from you name the industry. If it's on the internet, I'm taking the phone call. So it's interesting because there's a lot of people that call in that are in nonprofits, and they're like, well, I work for a nonprofit. Can you have anything for us to give for free? It's like, dude, like just because you work for a nonprofit doesn't mean that you're not making any money.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that people that are working for the nonprofit aren't getting paid. You might not, all nonprofits are probably raking in the dough, but there's some nonprofits that are doing well, and the people on the board are probably getting paid well too.
Well, there's it's Bo Burnham's old song where he talks about, like, imagine you started a company that makes rape whistles, and like even though you started the good company trying to reduce the amount of rape, now you don't want to reduce it at all, because if the rate declines, you'll see an equal decline in whistle sales. And it's like, it's 100% true. And that guy just got nominated for Emmy. He's nominated for an Emmy off of his last special, Inside, that he made during the pandemic, all by himself. Captures all the feelings that we all experienced during this whole year of being inside of our homes, not being able to leave. That's a dude who had quit comedy for 5 fucking years because he had social anxiety of people singing along to his songs. So this is what life is about. If you're an artist, God ends up making you have arthritis when you get older, because you're supposed to use the advantage and the skills that you have and the time that you have them to truly appreciate that they don't last forever. That's what life is. It's ironic. It's about, like, what are you doing right now that you really appreciate and you really love, and you do it every single day and you don't even think twice about it. Hone in on that, because one day you're not going to be able to do that same exact thing. I've lived in the beach for 23 years. I went to the beach and I haven't been there in a couple of years. I might live here, but I don't ever go experience the beach. Went to the beach to go hang out with a past guest, Chris Morano, digging in the dome. Shout out to him. But I went over to the beach. I smelled the air and I was like, oh my God, like if I want to move away as much as I want to move in the middle of the country, or move to Wisconsin where I look like a fucking 10 out of 10 compared to all the 5s that are fucking probably littered around there. I'm just kidding, people in Wisconsin. I love you. You make amazing cheese. But I'm like, when I smell that air, I'm like, damn, I want to move away from this so bad. But imagine if I never get to experience this again. It's like this fresh air, this amazing water view. You start to really appreciate the place that you're living. And anybody can do that with their life. Just open up your eyes a little bit, knock the dust out, and you'll start to see you can really appreciate your situation if you realize what it's going to be like if you never had this again. Yeah, bills might suck. But at the same time, do you have a good family? Do you have air in your lungs? Some people don't have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think taking stuff for granted is huge. I mean, out here where I'm at, visiting with my parents, they have I mean, I don't know how many acres they have, but it's a big property. I mean, I did when my brother was here with me, we kind of took little like meter and like kind of measured the area around it. So it's a full mile if you were to jog around the campground. In one lap would be a mile, so it's a good amount of space. But there's also some trails behind the campground that go to the Yadkin River, and so I'm waking up in the morning. Now I'm on a 3 hour time difference, so I hate waking up and not going right into work, because it's like now I kind of feel like I'm waiting around to go into work. But I'm waking up, I have some time, I'll take the dog out for a run, and I'll go four-wheeling. I'm literally taking a Jeep out through the trails down to the river, kind of kicking it. I'm kind of basically leisuring, kind of four-wheeling around in like, I'm like, damn, you're right. I could not do this back home in Arizona. And it's like, even though I'm kind of, dreading, because I kind of wasting time. I feel like I'm wasting time, but it's nice to get to do that and experience it. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I have my twin that lives in San Diego. It's one of those where my mom went to go visit him, but he doesn't live right in Pacific Beach like he used to. So it's kind of like, it's a bitch to go get in your car, go find a fucking parking spot. And then, now you got to hike a couple miles to get to the beach. So it's like, he doesn't do that every day. But yeah, it's one of those but when I go visit, that's all I want to do. I'm like, let's go check out the beach. But then when you're kind of doing it, yeah, you kind of, you don't like, kind of appreciate it as much, I think. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that you kind of hit it right on the head, that a lot of people do. They don't focus on that one day it's going to be lost. Life's kind of a tragedy in a way where, you're gonna find the love of your life. At some point, that love of your life is going to die, and that's tragedy. It's sad.
Yeah.
So
I think the main thing is just trying to experience what you have in the moment that you have it, because when you elevate your situation or you downgrade your situation, you start to realize how much you missed the position that you were at before. That's why I always talk about, like, when people say, "Oh, you live in a vacation town, it must be awesome every single day." I'm like, I'd rather live in a shithole and then be able to leave or be able to elevate my situation at any moment just by doing the smallest thing.
hmm Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's funny too. I kind of think about this a lot, because my parents now own and operate a campground, but when we were younger, we'd go camping a lot, and I kind of wonder when the last time was, like, Trump went camping. Really, like, when was the last time this motherfucker went camping, slept in a sleeping bag? It's like that stuff. To me, it's fun. To other people, they dread it. But I think the benefit of doing something like that is it gives you it kind of, like you said, you get to experience literally what it would be like if you were homeless.
Well, the best thing, Bezos, his startup out of a garage with an Amazon banner that was painted, and then now going up into space. Like, you don't think he still has that banner in his fucking house? Like, he
Yeah,
has that still. Like, you don't want to forget your roots of where you're from. As much as you might hate the town that you live in, as much as you might hate the life that you had, I would never trade in any of my moments of isolation, because they've helped me form me into the person I am today, where I can actually come at things with an open mind rather than just siding with one thing and never letting another answer in or another perspective in.
yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree with you. I think, yeah, I think yeah, you're right. I mean, he did start same thing with Elon Musk. You know what I mean? He was renting out his room and throwing parties and stuff just to make money. Like those
Well, he
guys.
went into debt buying college books, and he was pushed down a flight of stairs in school so bad that he was put in the hospital. And then now he's at this situation where people are hating the fuck out of him. And he's just like, he's not about pissing people off. He just wants to make his life easier. So he's not about helping. Like, everyone's like, he's building tunnels. I'm like, he was, but then he moved out of California and didn't need to build tunnels anymore. Like, he gives up on things he's only trying to benefit his life, which is, I can understand. I would do the same shit sometimes too.
Well, I think the one thing that I like about Elon Musk is that what some of the ideas that he comes up with, he's trying to look at like, it creating a return on investment for his customers. So like, the Tesla, it's a self-driving car. He's like, then if somebody buys that self-driving car, it could literally go out and be a fucking practically an Uber and make them money as they're not driving. And then like the tunnels is like kind of help saving time. So and then even with PayPal, I mean, damn, look at how much PayPal has benefited everybody, like, on the internet doing like transactions. So that's kind of like, I think that's kind of like a cool thing. But that dude still busts his ass. I'm sure all of them bust their ass. I mean, they now that they're at a point where, even if they're saying they haven't helped people, actually Amazon's helped a shitload of people. 'Cause you
Yeah.
can get online and get a package in 2 days. I'm sure their employees are busting their ass and maybe having to piss and shit in a bag. Like, that's not cool. And I was actually reading this the other day, and I kind of think I do think it's kind of made a valid point. They're saying the 40-hour work week was kind of designed for people who had somebody staying at home watching the kids, so when they'd come home they weren't having to cook. That was what the 40-hour work week was designed for. So and you're right. I mean, it's kind of funny because at my office, even though I'm working from home, if I'm not on the computer, like plugged in, ready to take a call, if I like step away, it puts me into an unavailable status. And I only get so much unavailable status. So it's like last month, I almost got written up for it because I was, I took a longer break and I was, just letting time, I was basically taking 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes. And then at the end of the month, it was coming to the point where I wasn't hitting my availability number. I wasn't on the phones for that long. But when you looked at how many calls I took per day and what I sold and like how happy customers were working with me, I was hitting all the fucking check marks that they were asking me to hit, except for I was like actually probably accomplishing more than my colleagues, but I wasn't on the phone as long as them. So it's like, but I was still going to get fucking penalized for it. And it's like, to me, that's kind of bullshit. It's like, oh, if I'm hitting these 3 marks, so I kind of agree with you. I mean, I do think, people got to bust their ass, but sometimes too, if you don't have time outside of your normal day work life, you're not going to go do your dream, you know what I mean? Or make that happen. Yeah.
It's a weird world.
Yeah, yeah, especially now. It's definitely getting weird. I enjoy it. I definitely am happy. I'm living through it. I feel like especially I feel like we're in a very unique day and age where we saw the phones. We saw what they were like on the phone, where the cord was attached to the wall, and you had that little fucking dial up. And
Yeah.
now we got cell phones in the palm of our hand to almost where the laptops are I kind of see the future of like the cell phone's going to be on your watch where it will like fucking pop out and it will become big and then you can sit there and like type on a electronic keyboard or it will be like LED.
Well, they just
I
made the new flip phone thing where your iPhone can now flip, but you can
Oh
also
really?
pull it out and then flip the screen up so it becomes this giant like computer tablet thing that
uh,
you can control
yeah.
your car with and then flip it back down into a regular cell phone and talk that way now. It's been
Oh, awesome.
brand new thing they're rolling out.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. You know what I mean? I know we're not far from it, and that's what I was kind of joking. I'm like, we're living in 2021, and we haven't figured out how to make these iPhones waterproof yet. Like, I,
Or even desalt the fucking ocean so California's not going through droughts.
yeah, yeah, I know. I think we have the technology. It's just that's another thing too. Like, my grandfather, he was a chemical engineer. He worked for GM, and he was kind of talking to me about this too. He's like, they used to have the electronic cars way or like electric cars. But why did that stop? Because there was a point in time, before Tesla came out, where you could plug in your car and stuff, and then those kind of dissipated. It's because the gas companies we're going to be losing so much money, and since they had so much money, they wiped that industry out because like you said, they're looking at it in the short term where they're not looking at it in the long term of or
What's
making.
profitable? Helping people or making money?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that at that point when you have that much money, you got to start looking at how to maybe reallocate it, and then that way you make those pain points when we are going through these changes in the economy and COVID. It's the pain point is not going to be as long because there are a lot of people like like shit where I was looking at like Walmart has like the self cleaning cars, and then you go through and they have the self checkout. Like that probably does eliminate a lot of jobs, but then it does create those, it creates people to go get other jobs. But during that time frame with them to get the skills and stuff like that, that's those pain points where that people, like you said, that's what they got to remember. And that's kind of goes back. It's funny that, you know, we're talking about this because you know, I guess I want to mention this to the listeners and people that are talking when I'm helping people out and they're like, well, I'm old. I don't know this because I'm 60 years old. It's like, that just means you've been doing it longer than me. That doesn't mean you stop learning.
Yeah.
At 60 years old, that doesn't mean you stop educating yourself. That's a continuous thing. It's like the phone's going to change for everybody. They all got to figure it out. Just because you're old doesn't give you an excuse to not fucking figure it out, you know? So. Yes, that's my 2 cents. So,
But look, Jason, we've been talking for about an hour and a half, man. Is there
yeah.
anything you want to end on?
No, man, I was gonna say I appreciate you bringing me back, man. It's been good chatting with you. It's been good catching up.
We'll get you on in the 900s too. We're coming up on that one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then yeah, hit me up with what you want, man. I'll paint you something and ship it out to you. Absolutely.
I want a Jason Cooper original.
I got you, bro, for sure.
Well, is there any place that people can find you at?
On Instagram, you can find me Jason Chris Cooper. That's the one I'm most active on. But yeah, Instagram. I do have I am gonna be rolling out my own website, jasoncoop.com. It's still kind of in the works. I had something up, but I just gotta get, you know, I have so many of them. I'm starting to consolidate everything. But yeah, Jason Chris Cooper at Instagram. That's the best place to find me.
I'll make sure to link everything in the description. And thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast.